As many of you know, the indie horror genre seems to be an ever-evolving and booming style in the gaming market. These games started to gain traction with Slender and exploded with the rise of FNAF, and now we're finding even more clever and mesmerizing horror games coming onto the market. Among these newer titles, you'll find a masterpiece called Little Nightmares. Much like all these horror games, we don't know exactly what's going on in the world of Little Nightmares. The plot is murky and unclear. There seem to be otherworldly powers at play, and as usual, our protagonist is somewhat of a mystery. Unlike many of the games in the indie horror genre, however, Little Nightmares has one thing in particular that is unique from FNAF or Slender or Tattletale or Bendy and the Ink Machine. This game is not played in first person. In fact, we get to stare at our adorable little character all game as we run away from noodle-armed janitors and fugly cooks. So rather than the main mystery being about other people or the world itself, as it is with other horror games, Little Nightmares' mystery revolves around 6. Not 5, nor 4. The number is 6, who is also our main character. Now, does our character's name mean something? Perhaps it does, and perhaps not. There's many mysteries to this story. What vessel are we on? Why are we trying to escape? What is the purpose of the vessel? How did we get trapped here to begin with? Why are all these customers so gross? What's wrong with your face? Today, I'm going to go in depth about my view of 6 and her story, and that includes what this all means. So grab some gnome meat and prepare for spoilers, cause we're about to tiptoe into the story of 6 and Little Nightmares. The story you never knew. We're going to start at the place where most things start, the beginning. We start off with a short, dark cutscene. Slowly, as the screen becomes clear, we see a lady in a mask turn to look at us, and with a startled jump, we awake. And look how adorable we are! First of all, we're sleeping in a suitcase. I mean, who am I, Stuart Little? 90s reference aside, we're playing as a little girl wearing a dirty yellow raincoat, and our only worldly possession is a Zippo lighter, which is cool and all, but don't start smoking when you're that young, kids. You're just begging for lung cancer! As we get up, let's pause for a moment and look at our surroundings. Now, there isn't really much in this room to go off of, but there's one particularly important detail we should take note of. The suitcase we are sleeping in has pictures taped on the side. Now, maybe one of you youngins out there have 20/20 vision, but for me, I can't tell what those pictures are of. However, we can still make some assumptions just based on the fact that there are pictures taped in this suitcase. This implies that 6 has been living in this room for quite a while. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm staying somewhere and I don't plan on staying long, I don't decorate. I don't bring my own pictures to a hotel so I feel at home. So these pictures being taped up implies that 6 has been here for quite a while. That brings us to another question. Why does she decide to try to get out of this place today? Has she tried every day and has never been able to? Keep these questions in mind as we continue through 6's story. But for now, we have a bit more of her backstory. 6 is on this vessel which is called the Maw and has been for some time, long enough that she felt the need to decorate her deplorable home. We also know that either 6 is really small or everything else is really big. I don't know about you, but I can't sleep very easily in a suitcase. Considering those two options, it seems more likely that 6 is just tiny as opposed to everything else being massive. So we've got a tiny individual stuck on the Maw and trying to get out. Let's continue. As we go into the next few rooms, we reach a place where we get a scope of just how massive this place is. Again, just this room brings about some questions. In every room before this, everything has been massive, yet now we find some stairs that are perfectly our size. 6 isn't small for this world. There's just 2 sizes that seem to be around. We actually went by some gnomes earlier, so perhaps they built these stairs. It's unclear as of now. But we do know that our size isn't out of place as like we expected. How interesting. Let's move on. A couple rooms later, we meet another human. Too bad he's dead, but not just dead. Based on the chair, his hanging from the ceiling, and the envelope at his feet, he committed suicide. The envelope hasn't been opened. It seems that we're the first to find him. However, 6 has no reaction to this hanging person, which leads me to believe that she has ventured at least this far before. In addition to that, since the envelope hasn't been opened, she's probably too young to even read. So let's add that to our character's profile. A little ways down the line, we find a makeshift rope made out of bed sheets or some other type of material. It's the type of thing you'd see from a bride getting cold feet and running away on her wedding day. But how did it get here? Have we been here before? Did we leave this trail? Or perhaps the gnomes made this path? Either way, someone or something has been here already. Once we climb up the rope, we find ourselves in a playroom. Interesting, isn't it? A deserted playroom filled with toys for children, yet they're are no children, and there's a makeshift rope escaping from the playroom's bathroom. It's possible that we escaped from this playroom using this rope and now we're coming back, but whether or not it was us, something terrible happened here. Why else would a child feel forced to climb out of a bathroom window to escape? And just to add to this theory, the playroom door is blocked by electric bars. Whoever is running the maw didn't want children leaving, to the point that they were willing to hurt children who tried to escape. A bit later, we find ourselves in a nursery with a bunch of sleeping children. Kinda makes sense considering the play. Oh my god, it's Mr. Noodle Arms! Yep, definitely would have tried to climb out the window too. This guy is blind as a bat, but has ears like a fox. His ramen arms speedily climb around searching for you when he hears noises, but if you're quiet like a good girl, he'll leave you alone. So shut the flaffle muffin up! Once he leaves and we continue through the nursery, we can make out the snoring of the babies in the cribs. Well, that's good at least. They aren't dead. Yet. But between the escape attempt, the suicide guy, and your measly home, we know something isn't right. There's something evil we're trying to escape from. The real question is to find out what it is and why it's doing what it's doing. As we continue, we find what looks like a prison cafeteria, and one that is our size no less. Wait a minute. If there's a nursery, then a cafeteria for children? Are these people keeping children for years? Allowing them to grow up but keep them prisoner? It seems likely, doesn't it? I mentioned earlier that Six has been on the maw for at least a while based on the decorative pictures in her suitcase. Is it possible she was born here? Or brought here when she was even younger? It seems likely. But the nursery, followed by this prison-looking cafeteria, is proof enough to me that children are being held here, possibly for years. As we pass by the cafeteria, Six begins to succumb to some sort of hellish hunger. It seems to consume all of Six's energy, bringing her to the point of nearly collapsing when, luckily, a silhouetted figure throws us some food from the cafeteria. It's possible that we haven't eaten in days, just barely hanging in there. If we are the child that escaped out that window however long ago, it's likely that we're malnourished, starving, which would also explain why we're so small considering our intelligence. When children get malnourished at a young age, they don't grow and gain muscle as they should, even though the brain continues to develop. It seems likely to me that this happened to Six, and now, in a desperate attempt to find food and escape, she's begun venturing back the same way she came. Further along in the game, we find a small little cabin that I believe is inhabited by Mr. Noodle Arms. The picture on the wall is definitely a younger version of him, and based on the tasks we've seen him do so far, it doesn't seem like he's really in charge. He's down in the lower levels taking care of kids, doing janitor stuff. This seems like the personal quarters to me. The other pictures on the walls are primarily of gnomes, showing that there is, or at least was, some sort of friendship or admiration of them. However, much like the picture of Mr. Noodles, these pictures are also old, and the gnomes now seem scared to be out in the open. Something must have happened on the maw to cause this fear in the gnomes. The question is what? Later on, I think we find our answer. In another fit of hunger, Six finds some food inside a cage. A cage that just so happens to be perfect for capturing you, or anyone your size, like a gnome. Is Mr. Noodle Arms trying to capture gnomes or children? Or maybe both? It's hard to say for certain at this point, but we can tell that since he's blind, it would be pretty easy to capture a gnome instead of a child, or vice versa. So, we've found out why the gnomes are terrified. When we awake, we find ourselves locked inside a cage surrounded by other confined children, or gnomes. It's too dark to really tell for sure. As we make our way further, we run into Mr. Noodle Arms, taking dead children and wrapping them up and putting them on hooks. We can take this as confirmation that something horrible was happening to these children. With this information, I think we can cement the idea that Six was somehow trapped on the maw as a child, escaped out the window of the playroom, lived as long as she could in seclusion, and now, in desperation, is venturing back into the inhabited part of the maw to attempt to escape. After escaping the noodles of death, Six plops down a vent to find herself in a sea of shoes. Perhaps this didn't mean anything to you, but not only is this utterly horrifying, it's also some subtle Holocaust imagery too. In case you aren't up to date on your Holocaust history, let me fill you in for a minute. Concentration camps killed thousands of people, and one of the issues that they ran into was what to do with all the clothes of the people who died. There are historical pictures and museum pieces that are only shoes of people who died in concentration camps. This room in Little Nightmares is not only a replica of these pictures, but it depicts the idea that there is some sort of mass genocide happening on board the maw. The maw isn't just a death trap, but a trap specifically to kill thousands of a certain type of person. I'm not sure what type of person that is yet, but I think we'll find out as we continue onward. As Six continues her journey, she eventually uses that hook pulley system we saw earlier with Mr. Noodles to travel from one part of the maw to another. Behind Six and in the background, we can see other hooks carrying body bags of the dead children we saw earlier in the game. When Six lands on the other side, she also lands on a mountain of body bags. She then walks over a ton of metal crates containing more body bags until she finds a blood-stained path leading to a door. The door, it opens to a kitchen. Hundreds of human children body bags leading up to a blood-stained path to a kitchen. And right before this kitchen was a pile of empty body bags. There's no other way of analyzing this. They are taking dead children and using them for food. Disgusting. Just the thought makes my stomach churn, but then again, the game is called Little Nightmares. Perhaps that's a reference to how the owner of the maw thinks of children, that they are little nightmares. In this kitchen, we meet the chef duo from, I don't know, somewhere ugly. Although, if you look closely, they seem to be wearing masks. Not only do their faces show no change or reaction at all when they see you, but occasionally you can see one of the chefs lift up his mask and scratch underneath it. I think this pretending to be ugly thing is going to be very important to the plot later on, so keep it in the back of your mind. Further down the line, we finally see what this establishment is for. To be blunt, it's for fat, ugly people to get more fat and ugly. They come in an endless line, forcing food down their gullets. And if they see you, they try to catch you. They want to eat you, which I guess makes sense considering they're eating other children too. As we scale our way into the dining hall, we get a quick glimpse of a woman looking over the crowd. The same woman we saw in our nightmare at the very beginning of the game. Is she the owner? Judging by the way she's looking at this crowd and the earlier nightmare of her, I think she is. But what is the purpose of this place? We'll need to finish the game to find out. As we progress, we find a bathroom with a one-way mirror. A one-way mirror in a bathroom? What is this woman trying to do? Why is she spying on her customers? What is her true purpose for hosting this establishment? Luckily, the next step in our journey is to enter her quarters. This is perhaps the most important part of the game. There's many pictures on the walls here that tell us a story. There's a picture of the maw itself right before we enter the lady's room. And more importantly, there are some pictures of a little girl. This, combined with the nightmare Six had of this lady, is fairly solid proof to me that Six is this lady's daughter. Think about how easily Six was able to get around the maw, how she has been on the maw for a long time, how she had pictures. She wasn't a visitor on this ship. No, she lived on this ship. And the only other person that we know who lives here besides the cooks and Mr. Noodles is this lady. It's not a coincidence that she has a picture or two of a little girl. No, this is Six's mother, and her mother tried to get rid of her, and clearly boarding school wasn't an option. We eventually end up facing our mother in battle, and our only weapon against her is an unbroken mirror. Using this unbroken mirror, we are able to disable our mother and then eat her. Whoa, okay there, we gained some crazy power from eating her, but let's go back to the fight for a minute. Why does an unbroken mirror hurt her? Come to think of it, every mirror besides the one-way glass mirror was broken. The whole game is filled with broken mirrors. What does that mean? And does it have anything to do with all the fat, ugly people eating and the genocide imagery that we discovered earlier? Yes, it has everything to do with all of that. But before we start analyzing the game as a whole, let's first finish the game. Six, with her newfound power to absorb souls or life or energy or something like that, walks through the maw, killing as she goes. She exits the ship and we see the maw like an island with a smokestack out in the water. And before the game ends, we hear a ship's horn blowing. Poetic. Now what does this whole game mean? What the hell happened here? Well, let's go through everything we've discovered to bring forth the whole story. The lady in the mask is Six's mother. Six was most likely born on this ship, hence having pictures that she keeps in her suitcase. The mother and Six obviously don't get along. We knew that from the very beginning of the game when Six had a nightmare about her own mother, and again at the end when they battle. As we go through the game, we see that someone has hung himself, that children are being confined, killed, and eaten, that a never-ending supply of horrible people are boarding the maw to gorge themselves with food. We know that this woman's face has some sort of power, a power that can be reflected with a mirror that isn't broken. And we know that this lady, as the owner, wants all these children killed. Remember all the shoes. This is a premeditated genocide. But a genocide of who? That's what I want to answer. And I believe the pictures of Six give us our answer. This lady, who is never without a mask, is trying to kill all the beautiful people in the world. The people she is feeding and supporting are all ugly, obscene monsters. She hides her face because she is ashamed of it. She has cooks wear masks to make them look like abominations. I believe something happened to this lady. Something happened to her face that turned her from beautiful to hideous, and she could not bear for anyone else to be more beautiful than her. So in an attempt to regain her former beauty, she began killing all the beautiful people she could, including beautiful babies. By doing this long enough, she would eventually regain her beauty because everyone else would be as hideous as her guests. There was only one problem. She had a daughter, a beautiful daughter, more beautiful than she was, and she couldn't handle that. She fought with it for years as Six grew up, but eventually she gave in to her vanity, taking Six down to the nursery to be brought up and killed with the other beautiful children. Only Six escaped and survived, only to come back later and kill her own mother. A genocide in the name of beauty, a woman of pure vanity in charge. A daughter forsaken comes home for revenge, knowing her mother's one true weakness, her own hideous face. And that's the story. You never knew. That's my dark take on Little Nightmares, a scary genocide machine to kill beautiful people. But there is so much more to this game that I didn't have time to get into. There's an entire character that was taken out of the game. There's a theory about Six's dad being the man who hung himself. There's theories about sequels. There's theories about Six's name. There was just too much to throw into one video. So if you guys enjoyed this, let us know, and maybe we'll make another video to answer some more of those questions. Also, if you're wondering what the names on the screen are, they're some of our amazing Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become one, then feel free to check out our Patreon. This video is way too long already, so I'm gonna get out of here. See you guys in the next one.